All right, everyone. Happy Friday to you. And I'll tell you what, these green markets really are making for a happy Friday. Now, we got some things to consider here. I don't know if it's going to be a take profit sort of a weekend or if it's going to be one where we see it let ride. And honestly, with Bitcoin being up where it is right now, it just might be one of those let it ride kind of weekends where the market is rolling the dice with a risk on environment. So we're going to take a look not only at the overall indices that we have here, so related to the NASDAQ 100, the S&P 500, Russell 2000. We'll also talk about Bitcoin being as that index for crypto, if you will, that's getting into the, we'll call it danger zone for right now until maybe we make it above the clouds. And then also the best penny stocks to buy now. We're going to give an update on those. So RZLV stock, BBAI stock, NVTS stock. I'll also toss Beam in there. So I have been talking about that one that might have some massive potential for really pushing to some upside based on the technicals that we're seeing that continue to be very interesting. And then finally, I'll give an update on my top 5 underdog picks that are also enjoying some of this green market that could really put in some outperformance. My number one pick, Nike out there also being pretty darn incredible so far. So let's go with SPY. And you can see in the pre-markets here that once again, we're putting in even more all-time highs for SPY, even though it is in this extended hours trading period. Now, something I see when I look at a 5-minute chart like this one, let me get a good view for you, is that we have, let me snag a trend line. Let me see at the technicals if they don't get in the way. There we go. And I want to draw this peak and then across there. And then across the bottoms of this thing, and one other thing I want you to see as my eyeballs start to fall on this is this near-term rising wedge sort of pattern. Now, this could be some indication that we might get a little bit of sell. Now, there's a bigger rising wedge pattern that we're in that we're almost up to that as well. So this isn't everything, and it doesn't mean that we're going to see things sell off, that we're going to see any sort of reversal. Now, mind you, it is kind of a crazy time. So if we saw the profit taking because people don't want to sweat the weekend risk, that would be very understandable, and it would be those intraday technicals that would tell us about that. So that would, of course, be looking for the bearish crossovers, for dips below VWAP, for rejections off VWAP, things like that could be very good in telling what it is that we're going to see. But pre-market, once again, green this morning for SPY, about 0.25% as I record this video. If we go to the Qs, we are up in this big fat area of resistance that goes from about 603 to about 610. We found support at the 605.36. So if you watched my previous videos, you heard about that. The next one to the north of this thing is 609.76. So almost 610. Sitting on top of 610 really opens this thing up for another $10 climb. So we'll see what we get for that. If we do get that return back to ARF on this thing, that big support that we could be looking for, while there's some bounces to be found along the way, is still that 605.36 that we currently happen to be trading above. IWM, man, look at this thing. This is awesome. Not at all-time highs. It's the only one lagging behind, but it also stands to bear the greatest risk, if you will. If news should happen to go sideways, because this tracks the small cap stocks that are out there, and they are less insulated against risk, the least out of the 3 ETFs that I have here tracking the major indices. So if we go back to the daily chart on this one to see how we're performing, yeah, we haven't overtaken that previous peak that we had going back to the 23rd of September. However, we are in the pre-market looking like we might make another run on that. I still have that $248 price tag for the IWM, which we haven't quite hit. We got within 82 cents, if you will, of that $248 price tag I've been talking about for a while. Going back to this inverse head and shoulders that, if I can put it on screen for you, is right back here. You can see the left shoulder, the right shoulder, the big old head on this thing. And then we also had this major retest on the neckline back here and made pretty much a straight climb since then with no real structural deviation during that time. Maybe a little bit here, but it looks like we're getting back into that near-term bull channel that you can see right here for that sort of straight up parallel line area that you have on IWM. So for Bitcoin, I said about the danger zone, as soon as we break into the $120,000 range is where we get this massive sell pressure. We're looking at the weekly chart here for Bitcoin versus the US dollar. And really, it's not until we sit up on top of this part of this rectangle that's up here, which happens to be at 123,451. But we got to sit on top of that in order to see further move to the north. So if we put up the Fibonacci retracements and extensions, you can see a little bit more of that. There we go. There's the retracements that also pop up. and it looks like this previous peak was at 124,517. That's that real marker, even though that 123,621, which is a 2618 Fibonacci retracement level, that's going to be critical for us. Sitting on top of that, I think, would be enough to allow us to push up. Certainly sitting on top of 124,517 would be a real marker for success. Definitely some resistances as soon as we get north of 130. So 131 up to about 140. Massive resistance there as well. And then clear skies from 140 to 150, which is my inverse head and shoulders price target, which is also my price target for end of year 2025. We'll see if we can get there. About 30 grand away, so about a 25% climb from where we're at right now. Big Bear AI stock, what's going on with that? Let me give you that update. So that we're looking at the daily chart. The number to sit on top of is 735. We've got now 2 rejections at 736, showing us that if we can certainly sit on top of that, it also confirms this resistance area that I've talked about since before we've ever had these peaks. I talked about it a long time ago, from the time we were back in here, even beyond that. You could even see the established lines that we have in here for support and resistance. In this case, resistance, that we just need to sit on top of that 735 if we can. We have this minor trend line, and then 785. And then really that major stopping point is when we hit north of $8 per share. So today might be that day that we break higher, especially if the market continues to be strong and green for us. NVTS had an absolutely astounding day yesterday and on massive volume. So take a look at the technicals. What I said in my morning video yesterday was sitting on top of this 770 line. We opened up above it, and I also talked about probably with enough momentum melting through. That was the phrase I used, melting through these near-term values that we have here for Fibonacci retracements, both of these 618 levels. That's exactly what we did. I said we could probably find rejection then as soon as we hit north of $8 per share. This 842 to 862. We got rejected at 844 before this thing sold down. After a volume move like this one that we had for NVTS. Let me take that down so you can really see more of the volume structure that we have on this one. There we go. So we had a gap up move on strong volume. That's bullish for today. So keep NVTS on your radar for today. More good things be coming our way. Be mindful of this selling pressure that happens as soon as we near that $10 mark. This could be that push that really gets us up there again, making this a 2-digit stock with significant upside. So still about 25% to go in order to get there. Then we'll see what happens around this selling pressure area that starts at pretty much the mid 8s and lasts all the way up until we get to about that about 950. Sitting on top of that would be that next price discovery that we would have, that I think, here we go. If we had to look pretty far left, we had to look back to 2023 to see the last time that we were able to peak this thing up in that $2 or that 2-digit range for Navitas Semiconductor. RZLV AI PLC, there we go. We're up against a little bit of the structure from back here when we look to the left. Got to push up above that. What we really want to see, because so far we still, even after yesterday's incredible climb, that yesterday we had 24% on this one, we still have a lower high. This next high is the peak that we want to break at 744. We're up against a little bit of a shelf as we look to the left over here. So a little bit of resistance that's there. If we put the technicals up, what are the numbers near term to break? 664 and 671. Let's take a look intraday to see if any extended hours actually touched it. And look at this. And I promise you, and you don't have to believe me, I don't care one way or the other. These lines were on here. Go back and look at my old videos. Look at the 2 rejections that we got on here. This is exactly what I would expect to see during this pre-market trading. Sitting on top of 671 is going to open us up to 779. And if we go back to the daily chart, now that the technicals are on here, that would give us that new peak. We'd probably get a rejection right around this previous pivot that we had, which happens to be at $7.44. That's if we can make it above this shelf of resistance that we have over here to the left. And you can see the Fibonacci retracements that are also at about that level. So 671 is that number to sit on top of. Supports down here at 620. Down below that 563 to 545 that I talked about before when we were up at these previous highs and said, I'm watching for that pullback here. And we got it, and it was important for us. And then when we broke it, I said, watch the 50. We got that. Massive bounce up from that time down from below $5 to now being up in the mid 6s. That's a very, very nice move. Thank you, RZLV, for that push back up. And the volume was actually pretty decent on it as well. Not as much as that sell down, but we are still looking. This is still incredible volume that we have here, much better than these lower conviction volumes that we saw before that, and certainly much higher than all these other volumes besides besides the Wednesday, Thursday's volume was the highest volume that we've had in quite a while. We actually have to go all the way back to December of last year before we find a higher volume than what we had yesterday, with, of course, the exception being October the 1st for that big old earnings announcement sell down day, if you will. So I'll reset that and we'll move on over to Beam. There we go. For Beam, I'm still looking for a number north of what's on here for the daily chart. It's 291. You can see the sell pressure that we get from these high wicks over here. The weekly chart tells a better story. I've told that before, and we're definitely making this consolidation type pattern where these tops are coming down, the bottoms are coming up. We're looking for that squeeze. It's looking like that squeeze is going to be to the north. We're up above the 50 week. That's win number one. Win number two is the bigger win, which is getting up above that 13 EMA and actually holding it as support on the monthly chart, because you can see the massive sells that we get every time that we get there. So sitting on top of that 308 is going to uncap our upside on this thing and allow us to finally make a much stronger move to the north, which can show us the high threes, which would be another 30% climb on top of it. And there's somewhat of a deep enough options market on this that you might be able to do some outsized gains with some leverage plays. So I'm going to wrap things up here, guys, with what I have for the underdog picks. Now, mind you can see my transactions over at the Discord along with the other panel experts that are over there as well. And if you do go ahead and take a look, Chipotle might be one of those big plays that you really want to pay attention to. If I take a position on this, you'll know that things are in really good shape. I would love to switch this thing from a yellow flag to a green flag, saying from maybe to bullish like I did for Nike, because Nike is indicating to us not only by its momentum, but also by the moving averages that we're back into bullish territory, at least on the daily chart for Nike. Chipotle is down below the 50 and the 200 day, which would be significant climbs of from where we're at now till up here would be a 5% climb. It's a 20% climb-ish, about a 20% climb to get up to that 200 EMA that we have on here. Look at the shelf that we have right across this resistance, this rejection. If we're able to break up above that move to the north of this, which happens to be at 40.40 where it is right now in the pre-market, breaking up above 40.40 could take us back to this previous pivot over here at about 41.18. Actually, that low price is 41.18. And then that, I don't think it's going to be a minor stop for us. Breaking above this shelf like we have it here, especially with the RSI freshly crossing 50 after this several day long rise back out of that oversold territory, I think that 5% move is likely coming in the near future if we're going to get it. So trade desk, when we look at the trade desk, this one also in very good shape. The volume support isn't quite there yet. As a matter of fact, I'm going to move Chipotle up above trade desk for that very reason. The momentum, however, is up over 50, so that's one advantage that it has. But without the volume support, we got a big old shelf back here to break. And this makes it much less favored from me that we could see that sort of breakout, but it could happen. We have a very strong curling of the 5 and the 13 up towards the 50 EMA, that 50 EMA sitting at 55. If we can break this resistance over here to the left, we can certainly see that next climb coming in here, which would be about 6 to 8%, or as my middle school students would tell you, 6-7%. So if you also have middle schoolers and you've heard the annoying 6-7 thing, you're welcome, and I'm sorry. So moving on to Under Armour. Under Armour still not seeing the volume conviction on this one. We are starting to get near 50 for the RSI. We want to watch for that. Has the same sort of shelf that we had for the trade desk. Has a little bit of room up to the 50 EMA. We want to see that volume support come in. We are getting some bigger volumes than what we saw back here for this consolidation period. Big old drop upon earnings release, and now we're starting to weigh in. Are we going to start to see more of that turnaround in that gap fill that could take us all the way back up north of $6 per share? Crocs, as we look at Crocs, this one in the number two spot as we are starting to see some of that volume push. We saw that back on Friday of last week, and now we're creeping up on crossing that 50 EMA. If we get rejected here down to the 13, but hold the 13, that's a very good sign. That could be a push back up above that we push back through the 50, break that resistance, and head off towards the 200 EMA, and likely this previous pivot that we have over here at about 91. If we sit on top the 50 instead, retest it, and show that the 50 is support, then we're still headed back to that pivot at about 91, 92, and then up above there to 99, which is about where that 200 EMA is. Possibly even if we get that high, up to that round number of $100 before we see that round number psychological resistance that could come along with it. Nike, look at this. So I talked about this one over the weekend, and so there's Friday's candle, a little bit of move Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday was the big day following earnings, that day having a 6% jump. And then yesterday, so where did we close on Wednesday? Just to look at this, we closed at 74, and then we peaked the next day at almost 77. So making a nice little climb there, some selling pressure, putting it back down. And if you look to the left here, you can see the trouble that Nike has as we get over here into these prices. Now, if I zoom out a little bit more, you can see even more history that we're starting to get that area of chop here. What we're looking for is continued volume. The momentum's great. We want to see more of those bullish crossovers. We want to see the 5 above the 13, above the 50, above the 200. So green above the yellow, above the red, above the blue. And you can pause that and play it back if you need to in order to rehear that. That'll certainly be a better indicator of further bullishness. Check out the candle on the week. And also check out the volume support that goes along with it, the RSI that's up above 50. And if we go out to monthly, getting the monthly chart to also show strong signs of volume with this increased momentum and getting it to cross over 50. Nike's setting up from a technical standpoint to go absolutely bonkers. And so that makes me pretty darn excited for what we could see from Nike and why it stays in my #1 slot for the top picks for the top 5 underdogs. You guys can let me know what you think of the best penny stocks to buy. Now, what about the market? Are you bullish thinking that we're going to go bulls on parade into the weekend? Or is it going to be where we see that profit taking and slight de-risking going into the weekend? I could honestly see that if today's a good day, that Bitcoin continues its climb and breaks that 125 and sits on top of it, or 124, sits on top of it throughout the weekend and really starts to shape up for a really very nice green start to the first full week in October. I'd love to hear from you guys. If you'd love to hear from me and the other panel experts supporting you in your journey towards financial freedom, find the link down in the description for the Discord. Code word doctor is going to save you 50% off your first month sign up. Check it out. It's an entire ecosystem there dedicated to helping you in this process, in your financial journey. And then, like I said, there's a team of experts, thousands of community members. You have live trading over there, AI tools, advanced charting tools. You have the bread bot that's over there that can tell you when those big moves are coming to your favorite plays. There's an Ask the Expert. Like I said, there's everything you could ever want that's over there and more than you could even dream of. So find that link. Also, if you want to learn to know the technical analysis like I have on here, or if you want to trade using those technicals, learn how to trade using options to really outsize your gains and add alpha to your portfolio, there's some coursework through Stockmo Academy. Code word doctor is going to save you $400. Bundling the two courses together is going to give you an additional bundle discount on top of it. Check it out. Support yourself. Invest in yourself in this journey, and let us help take care of the rest of in supporting you in this journey as well. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I am Dr. Stock, Doctor of Education. Remember, my friends, that learning is earning. It was the next video.